Lighting up the way. Valley Electric Association.
So net neutrality is the concept that consumers should essentially get to go where they want on the internet, when they want to go on the internet. They shouldn't be blocked. They shouldn't be throttled. Dating back to the 1990s, the sort of the advent of broadband and the internet for the commercial space, providers abided by these principles, and essentially because they were in the best interest of consumers. So at core, everybody believes in a free and open internet and how the internet should operate. The question for us as regulators in DC is, what's the right regulatory framework to ensure that we continue to have a free and open internet? At the end of last year at the FCC, we took a vote to reverse a 2015 Obama-era FCC decision that essentially tried to codify net neutrality principles through this old regulatory framework known as Title II, which dates back to the 1930s and the regulation of the Ma Bell telephone monopoly. So I think this decision is going to be a tremendously good one and beneficial for consumers, because what we saw was that in the 2 years that this Title II-based net neutrality approach was in place, we saw a decrease in investment by broadband providers. We saw broadband providers pulling back on investment. So I think we've done a great thing by reversing that 2-year-old decision to apply Title II. I think consumers are going to continue to be protected. We're going to continue to have a free and open internet, except now we won't have this overhang of the heavy-handed Title II regulatory regime.
Does this make a more competitive marketplace?
I think so. I mean, look, Title II imposed a lot of regulations on a lot of broadband providers, but the largest providers out there, AT&T, Verizon, Comcast, they have an army of regulatory lawyers that can work through all of those costs and regulatory obligations. The smaller the provider you get, the mom and pop that are either trying to be the first competitor in an area to AT&T or deploy for the first time in a new community, they don't have an army of regulatory lawyers. So working through the whole Title II regime was very costly and had a disproportionate impact on them. So by repealing Title II, we're lowering the barriers to entry, and that's going to get us more competition. And that's the direction we need to go. When you get out of DC, when I talk to people out here, what they care about is better, faster, cheaper broadband. And by reversing Title II, we're able to preserve a free and open internet that's always been there, but relieve that regulatory pressure on broadband providers. The United States has led the world in the deployment of 4G, which is the current high-speed iteration of wireless broadband. We led the world in that. Some of the difficulties you see in the comparison have to do really with population density. The United States has a very sparse population density. We have a lot of rural communities. The cost of deploying there is very difficult. When you look internationally at the comparisons, a lot of times we're looking at countries that are much more densely populated than the U.S., so it's a difficult comparison to make. But I think we're in actually very good shape here in the U.S. Comparatively. That doesn't mean we don't have work to do. We certainly do. We saw some communities today that need better, faster broadband, but the U.S. is leading the world in a lot of this, and we're going to continue to make progress through regulatory reform.